Roll call.
Parker,
Here.
Miscelinich, Olson,
Here.
Zittergruen,
Here.
Chisel,
Here.
Hadley,
Here.
Neal.
Here.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak to the council on anything that is not on the agenda? Hearing, seeing none. Consent agenda.
Item A, minutes of the March 4th, 2024 meeting. B, claims. C, accept and file fiscal year 23 audit. D, resolution setting public hearing for amending chapter 17.84, R5 Planned Unit Development District of the Decorah Municipal Code. E, resolution setting public hearing for the Decorah 2024 Carlson Park Gateway Trail Project. F, tax abatement at 1006 Shagbark Court, Ben Muzio, new construction. G, new Class C retail alcohol license with outdoor service for Traveling Tapster LLC. And H, amending Class C retail alcohol license Impact Coffee.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second, Parker.
Motion made by Olson, seconded by Parker. Discussion. Hearing, seeing none. Roll call.
Olson,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Miscelinich,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Motion carried. Conduct public hearing on plans, specifications, form of contract, and taking bids for the Decorah 2024 Dry Run Division Channel Improvement Project. Can you give some background on that, please?
Sure, so I'll combine backgrounds for items 5 and 6. 5 is the public hearing. Item 6 is the actionable item for council. So public hearing is going to be required for this project because of the project's estimated cost. Project is relatively straightforward. A lot of dirt work to reestablish the channel bottom as well as the banks with some riprap armament and some gabion baskets installed along the diversion channel. The city received 3 bids, lowest bidder being Zabo Construction out of Postville at $150,723.25. The engineer's estimate on the project was $260,509.20. This is partially funded through the WIF grant, WIF, that was awarded to the city. So we would work with Zabo, should they be awarded, to potentially even add some more improvements within, whether it was mortar or things like that, but we can do that after the council makes a contract award. I know with a vast discrepancy between the lowest bid and engineer's estimate, there might be some concern there. However, the other 2 bids were actually just a little bit above the lowest bid from Zabo, so not concerned on that discrepancy.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak during this public hearing? Seeing, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Item 6, consider resolution on plans, specifications, form of contract, and taking bids for the Decorah 2024 Dry Run Division Channel Improvement Projects.
I'd move to approve Zabo Construction at $150,723.25.
Second.
Motion made by Chisel, seconded by Neal. Any further discussion?
Do we know why the bids were so much lower than the engineer estimated cost by 100,000 or more?
So everything's unit pricing, so the individual units were priced lower, not just estimated quantities. So it's all based on unit pricing, but the environment right now among contractors, we're being told, is much more aggressive. Not as much work that's out there as there has been in years past, and so all 3 came in at very competitive pricing.
So good for us.
Correct.
Okay, roll call.
Chisel,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Miscelinich,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Consider requesting the United States of America to release land from existing lease with City of Decorah.
Okay, so first, do want to recognize Councilmember Olson was very instrumental in getting these conversations started and getting the right contacts with the federal government. The city had been trying for years, much even before my arrival here, to talk about, that direction, the adjacent property. So we've been in contact with representatives of the Corps that the Corps handles all land leases associated with the U.S. Army, and conversations are going well to the point that they're willing to release some land. I did press further about the building itself, so much so as sent a draft resolution that said the city further requests that the United States of America also consider termination of the lease, and I got a response that said, how about you take that out of there? Got it. Okay. So anyway, those conversations have happened. They know we're interested in the release of the building as well, but we're being told that if the council approves this resolution and it serves as a formal request from the city of Decorah, we could look at the potential release of the land surrounding the property. And so for everyone in attendance, it's Dropbox file 007B. That is the aerial of what would be released. The starting point of the conversation that Army Reserve came back with was 007C. But for everyone else in attendance, it's a north-south line that is adjacent to the, it'd be just west of the barbed wire and the fence that runs north-south. It's just west of that. And the northern boundary would be the east-west parallel of that parking lot and that fence there. So it does release a little over an acre on the north side of the property and just shy of an acre on the east side as well. Again, there's much more to this process. This is going to serve as the formal request from the city.
Kirsten, you should do the honors.
Yeah.
Thanks to Travis, too, for taking the ball after I got it as far as I did and running with it and getting us to this point, so I appreciate that, too.
Do you want to make the motion?
Sure, I would love to. I'll make the motion to adopt the resolution in 7.
Second.
Motion made by Olson, seconded by Chisel. Any further discussion? I appreciate also the work that you've done on this. It was your due diligence that got this brought forward.
Thank you.
So, no further discussion. Roll call.
Olson,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Miscelinich.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Consider resolution setting public hearing for fiscal year 24 budget amendment. I think Carrie's working with this one.
Yes, what this is just setting the public hearing for April 15th at the regular meeting for the budget amendment. If you see in the Dropbox, it looks like it's about 2.9 million, but a lot of that has to do with the possible projects that we have coming up, and then also because a lot of that's going to be reimbursable through grants. Oh, that's true too. And then we also had to account for the land sales. And even with the projects that we did that we weren't planning on, like with the land sales, that always increases the attorney's fees, publication. So there's things go up alongside it too. So.
Okay.
And again, this would just set the public hearing.
That's
Yep.
correct.
I'm making a motion to set the public hearing for the fiscal year 24 budget amendment for April 15th.
Second?
Motion made by Neal, seconded by Olson to set the public hearing. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Neal,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Miscelinich.
Aye.
That'll be set for the next
April 15th.
15, April 15th, okay. Consider ordinance amending Chapter 2.08 City Engineer and creating Chapter 12.06 Street Superintendent of the Decorah Municipal Code, first reading.
So this ordinance is to reflect in city code the recent discussions we've had within work sessions, moving towards that public works model and removing the street, at the time it was termed street commissioner duties out of the city engineer's job description. And this creates the street superintendent role in a separate code section under the streets and sidewalks chapter of city code. So again, it removes it from city engineer, moves it to its own chapter under the streets and sidewalks title of city code. Again, based on the job description that council saw at the last work session, so this position would be appointed by the city manager, report to the public works director, and I believe that's all the background. Oh, one thing I will mention, so the street commissioner section of code had a lot of things that the city of Decorah did not have in practice. For example, it required every quarter that the street commissioner needed to come and present essentially a treasurer's report on road use tax dollars, local option sales tax, all those sorts of things. So that does remove that as well in code, which was not the practice either. It does say, now therefore further ordained, that the purpose of that is throughout code there's multiple references to the street commissioner, like they can declare a snow emergency and right-of-way work permits, things like that. So we also added that provision in the ordinance that would say anywhere it says street commissioner now means street superintendent. So we're trying to rectify the rest of code to make sure it matches.
And you will send us on to like Muni Code to make sure that they update the language that's cleverly written into your update?
Cleverly, thank you. I appreciate that. But yes, that,
Hadley will make a motion to accept amending chapter 2.08 and 12.06.
Second.
Motion made by Hadley, seconded by Olson. Any further discussion? Only the fact that I've appreciated all the work that has gone into doing the updates. Hearing none? Roll call?
Hadley,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Miscelinich,
Aye.
Zittergruen.
And that's the first reading.
Correct.
We'll have the next reading at the first meeting in April. Okay, consider ordinance creating Chapter 2.10 Public Works of the Decorah Municipal Code, and this is the first reading.
So slightly different here where we did not have a public works director in code. So this is the creation of a new chapter under the same title that the city engineer, city clerk, city manager, those jobs exist under this same title, Title II. So again, this will be an appointment made by and report under the direction of the city manager, as was presented in the job description we had about a public works director. Also lists that the street superintendent, water superintendent, and wastewater treatment plant superintendent shall be direct reports and oversee their general operations. So this creates that section of code, allows us to fill that position.
I'd move for approval of the first reading.
I'll second.
Motion made by Chisel, second by Mikulinich. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call?
Chisel.
Aye.
Misulinich.
Aye.
Hadley.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Zittergren.
Motion carried. It'll be the first reading. Once again, we'll have the second reading that first Monday in April. Discussion and possible action regarding the proposed Alliant rate increase and Decorah Municipal Electric Utility. I've asked Andy Johnson to deal with the first part as far as the proposed Alliant rate increase. I wonder if you'd come up and give us any type of an update you can as far as that from the Clean Energy Electric Utility organization that you work with.
Okay, yeah. So the rate increase you've all heard about was filed the end of last year, and the city joined the SETI coalition as an intervener. So the last rate increase was 2019. As many of you remember, the Winneshiek Energy District created the Decorah Area Group, and the city was a part of that also. So we intervened together. In rate dockets at the Iowa Utility Board, anyone can submit a comment, but to be taken sort of as testimony and considered actively by the board and staff, you need to be an intervener, an approved intervener. So that's why we try to take that action. Currently, there are 49 communities that have joined Decorah as being part of the SETI coalition. There are 86, I believe, these numbers can always vary day to day, communities that have passed resolutions similar to the one that you passed and modeled after this resolution. So those numbers I don't believe have ever been seen before in a rate case in Iowa at the Utilities Board. So they're already making waves, you could say, but the formal case with testimony being submitted hasn't started yet, because the testimony is in the development, and the first deadline for the first round, essentially, of direct testimony is mid-April.
Okay.
So we can bring more to you at that time. Certainly we'll distribute to all of the communities that have joined the SETI coalition, links to all the testimony that's been submitted at that time.
Okay.
It's a major rate increase, the biggest, I believe, in the history of the company, the third in 7 years, and part of a proposed cycle by the company of continued rate increases. So they have a great impact, and the SETI Coalition's goals, as we've shared with you before, are really to address the total magnitude of the increase, as well as to look specifically at things like energy burden on low-income customers, on small businesses in rural communities, as well as to try and keep the door open to the distribution grid so communities, customers, businesses, farms, colleges can actually invest in their own clean energy, like we see a lot of folks investing in solar, also in energy efficiency and storage and a lot of those technologies. So that's a lot of what we're working on in terms of specifics on the testimony. It's not all developed yet. All interveners, SETI included, are in that process of developing all that information. So
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, very much so. Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to hearing after that April piece.
You bet.
Okay, thank you, Andy.
Mayor, can I ask any follow-up questions?
Is it related to the?
The rate increase.
Sure.
Andy, thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about the details of the rate increase? I sort of see numbers thrown around in the media, but it seems like it's not very obvious, what the rate increase is going to be or how it's being packaged. I understand it's being spread out over 2 years.
Yeah, it is. It's different this time. This is the first time, at least that I remember, that they've asked for a sort of a phased-in rate increase. Usually it's sort of a big block. This is the revenue we need. This is how it's going to be distributed among rate classes. It starts yesterday, usually when they filed it, because they usually file an interim, which starts immediately upon filing. This year it did not take effect as an interim. They're waiting until approval, but they're asking for approval from the board to do a 2-year. So a certain amount the first year, as soon as they get approved, later in 2024, and then a certain amount again in 2025, which is part of what does spread some confusion, because there's marketing materials out there saying, oh, you're only going to see this much of a rate increase, but that may be the first round, and then there's a next round coming. The other aspect that's different from over the years is recently the legislature, at the request of the Utilities Board, changed the requirements for notification. So all Alliant customers have gotten some sort of a card in the mail or maybe electronically that says this is the estimated rate increase. It used to be that that estimated rate increase was based on Alliance controllable costs called the base rates. Now the change is Alliant or Mid-American, any company, any investor-owned utility needs to estimate the total bill impact. The difference being the total bill impact is going to be a smaller number because there are pieces of your Alliant bill, like transmission, that have nothing to do with, not nothing to do, but are not in Alliance control. That's just a pass-through from the transmission company. So if your total bill is this much and your total bill impact is this much, the actual amount of that is Alliance increase percentage of a base rate is actually larger, but you're not seeing that in the numbers. Now, the last piece of this, we have been running numbers, and actually you've seen some of them maybe because Jim Martin Schramm recently shared a letter that ran in Decorah News, Decorah newspaper. We have been trying to run some analyses, spreadsheet, database-based analyses for specific kinds of customers on what the real bill impact will be, because it's complicated when the proposals on a tariff don't just say, okay, we're going to up residential by 13% or whatever the number they're saying, but the numbers are changing based on summer rates, based on winter rates. Small business, for example, general service, the city included, could see an 80% increase in summertime peak usage rates. That's a lot. And these changes are related to how the pricing is on electric markets and how the company wants to pass that through. What we're seeing, unfortunately, is in specific analyses, as you may have seen, like Rubaiyat Downtown, Luther College, in many cases where the estimated bill impact per the company's literature was, say, 20%, Luther College is looking at, say, a 45% overall electric cost increase. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars more than the initial number would suggest. So, these numbers, these impacts are really, really large, by far the largest we've ever seen. At the same time, I should mention, as we've all seen, when a company brings a rate case to the utility board, there's the assumption that there will be interveners. There's the assumption that in the end, they will not get the full rate increase. So, I'm not standing here to say Luther is going to see a 45% increase or Rubaiyat a 30% or whatever the numbers that they came out to, because it will almost certainly get knocked down somewhat. How much is the big question, and of course when the next rate increase comes also.
Do you remember, Andy, when they were proposed to the last rate increase, what did that get lowered to? From what to what? Do you remember what that was?
25 to 8.
I believe it was about a 65% of their initial ask, somewhere in there.
Okay.
But I don't remember the
Okay.
exact numbers.
It's like when my kid asks for a midnight bedtime,
Yeah,
65%.
yeah.
end up
Okay.
negotiating on
Thank
something.
Thank you very much. Okay, can you give some background on the next part of this discussion, Travis?
Yes, so I did have council members ask that this be placed on the agenda. There was some discussion in the budget work sessions about whether the council had voted on this matter already or not. And so that previous discussion before the budget work session occurred in a regular work session of the council. So no vote had been taken, just general consensus taken. So the way this agenda item is framed is so it does allow for a possible action and a vote. However, placing a measure on a ballot requires a resolution of the council. So any action that, as a reminder, and also in our council rules, a motion should be in the affirmative. So even if you have every inclination to vote no on a specific item, you can still make a motion in the affirmative and vote no. Because a failed affirmative vote, or no, majority no on an affirmative is a failure, but a majority no on a negative motion does not mean it passes. It gets us into a weird conundrum. So always making the motion in the affirmative.
I'm going to have you say that again.
Always make the motion the affirmative.
Okay.
Just remember that much.
Yeah.
So the motion, council could potentially take action to direct staff to do something. Or that's honestly the one I envision. If it is council's wishes to draft a resolution to put this on a special ballot, that can only be a simple action to direct staff to draft it.
So once the council does make, once the staff makes the resolution, comes to the city council, and then it's approved at the city council.
Right, then the resolution would just be like any other resolution on an agenda that would be voted on separately.
Yep.
But for the sake of tonight,
Yep,
the motion cannot be to put this on a ballot.
that's right.
It has to be to direct staff to do something.
And that ballot would be in November, or can this be any time?
This can be any time because it's not associated with bond issuance.
So
So I'll open
Okay.
the discussion.
sure. And I did pass out, I put some thoughts on paper just to give some ideas in terms of directions that I was feeling like we could take this. It doesn't mean that I'm not open to other thoughts. Oh, here, sorry, Steve, I thought I gave you one on the inside. But I thought it would be helpful, one, to just sort of put in front of folks the current reality of where we are, and then also just offer up a phase proposal for us to consider. So I won't read the whole thing, but I do want to highlight some parts. And I think my biggest takeaway tonight, right, is that the circumstances under which the 2018 referendum were held are no longer at play today. The outright lies that Alliant used to win the 2018 vote by 3, I will remind council, have been exposed. The citizens of Decorah deserve a new vote based on the updated information with as much oversight from the IUB as possible to guarantee a fair election for the people of Decorah. So our current reality as it sits in terms of our relationship with Alliant is that Alliant has proposed a 2-year phase-in rate increase in which Alliant customers will see that their bills increase in October of 2024 and then again in 2025. Last year, Alliant revealed that they favor the option of a multi-year rate making, which if approved by the Iowa legislature would guarantee them an annual rate increase at this point for 2 to 5 years. And while it's difficult to project the Iowa Utilities Board final decision, Alliant's rate increase as proposed will raise residential costs an average of 13.4%, local businesses by 20%, and large general service customers by 17 to 20%. But as Andy indicated, that's nuanced, right, because of the way in which this new proposal has been laid out. And I won't read the rest of that particular paragraph. You can look at that on your own. Again, this is Alliant's third rate increase in 7 years and their largest rate increase ever. And this creates even greater disparities between Alliant ratepayers and the rest of Iowa ratepayers. And this is going to impact our economic vitality and create an undue hardship for our constituents. It will also burden the city with a significant increase in our electric bills. In 2018, during the referendum, Alliant said that their customers could expect a 3% increase followed by 1% annual increases on average for the next decade. A few months after the May 1st referendum, Alliant ratepayers received postcards notifying them that Alliant had proposed a rate increase to the Iowa Utilities Board that would raise the base rate by their customers 24 to 33%. What I didn't include here, of course, is that at that time, the entire Steyer Opera House was filled with pissed off Decorah residents, right, who said that they would have literally changed their vote if they knew what they knew now. And I wonder if we were to actually ask them now, that might even be even more so. Anyhow, later the IUB informed Decorah that it can only play a role once we've actually proposed a new referendum. This was in their response to us in 2019, right? They essentially said that if we were moving forward with a municipal electric utility at that time, they could communicate with us. But at this point, without us actually considering it on the books, it's not within their jurisdiction. So below are some recommendations that I think we should move forward with. These are based on the MEU task force that we established. And after 2 years of work, they recommended that we hold another referendum. Their concerns on timing were related to the school bond issue, which it seems will be in line to happen this November. So I propose a minimum of the following. Like I said, I'm open to other ideas or discussion on the following. That would allow us to schedule a referendum in 2025, after the first set of rate increases take place in October, and after the school bond issue of 2024. So I offer this idea of sort of a phased proposal. The first is that we allocate $50,000 of unspent sustainability funds in the 2025 budget to be set aside for the MEU-related legal and planning expenses. It doesn't mean we have to use them. I just think we should earmark them. A little background on this: when the electric franchise fee was established at 4%, both Mayor Borowski and Councilperson Hadley suggested that by setting this rate, we would be able to use some of the franchise fee funding towards the exploration of an MEU. Councilperson Carlson, Neal, and Luce vote on this issue was under the expressed interest of this coming to fruition. As per suggestions of the MEU task force appointed by the mayor and approved by the council, that we retain legal counsel to communicate with the Iowa Utility Board during the summer of 2024 to ask for the following. Again, more could be added. But first, that we somehow get this infrastructure depreciation formula. This is the formula that would essentially tell both Alliant and any community pursuing a municipal electric utility how they would essentially decide the value of a service area. When the feasibility studies were done back in 2017, this was something that was that was discrepant between them, like what the cost of the service area would be. We used depreciation values based on what they had sold other territory for. And I think it's important that the Iowa Utility Board sets this fee, or at least sort of is put on notice, like this is really important for communities to be able to decide whether municipalization is in their best interest. I also think that we should put in a request to make municipalization a fair fight, given the burden on taxpayers versus a corporate utility with infinite unregulated monies. So asking them to determine what type of oversight they might have during a referendum, as per their own suggestion in their 2019 ruling that they wrote us back, they indicated that they could assist us, and I think it would behoove us to figure out, well, what does that look like? What does the system look like? And hopefully put Alliant on notice, like, we're communicating with the Iowa Utility Board and they're watching. I think one of the mistakes made in the last referendum was the Iowa Utility Board didn't really know what was going on in Decorah until it was too late in terms of the referendum. And then also, I think, use legal counsel to help develop ballot language. One of the most confusing things in the 2018 or 2019-18 election was what citizens were actually voting on, right? We are not voting to spend unlimited funds and resources. We're not voting for anything other than what we already did with fiber. It is the exact same scenario of, in order to be able to communicate with the Iowa Utility Board, in able to apply to DOE grants like Montezuma did and just got $9.5 million from the Department of Energy, we have to have our own electric utility. We don't have to have customers. We don't have to have employees. We don't have to have a service area. We just need a utility, much like we have a fiber utility with no customers, no service area, no employees. It's a similar type of thing. That's what the referendum is actually establishing. And I think if we can do the job that we set out to do when we do this, right, and explain to people that's what you're voting on, this shouldn't be this tearing apart of our community. You know, we're going to spend lavishly $1 million that is outright probably not true, right? We just want to begin this process, and without this vote, there is nothing that we can do. And finally, I'd like to direct staff to consult with My Energy to get an idea of the partnership proposal. I think one of the other big questions in the last referendum was, well, who would run this and what's the transition plan look like? My Energy was very forthcoming last summer. They gave a talk right here. I think there were 8 people there, but it was, of all the talks given, David Lynch's and My Energy's were the most informative, where My Energy laid out a transition plan for us. The reason they couldn't do it before is because they were in negotiations with Alliant for other issues. But now they have provided that framework. I think they opened the door to us and said, let us know. We can sit down and talk about what this could look like. That would allow Decorah voters, again, a view into like, oh, okay, we could see how this could work for our community. They opened the door. I think we should meet them halfway. This is what our task force recommended. So again, this is what I outlined over the weekend for thoughts. We have time. It's a short council meeting, and I think it's really important, and we owe it to the people of Decorah to give this some thoughtful discussion. This affects all of our constituents a great deal. It affects me, right? I mean, why am I so passionate about this? Because my energy costs hurt, and I'm not even on a fixed budget. And these new rate increases, my parents are considering moving to Decorah, and they sit there and think like, whoa, we have Mid-America right now. Do we really want to move on to Alliant? That is a big cost for retirees, which is, 65% of Decorah is people essentially in retirement. And I look at Rubiat, you know, and what the article in the paper said about their costs. And I think about attracting businesses and keeping businesses downtown. And how do we do that when they can go to Waverly or Pella, right? Or, you know, anywhere that has an MEU. They can go to New Hampton. They can go to Waukon. They can go up to the business park, but not downtown, and pay lower utility rates. And that will hurt us in the long run. So with that, I will rest. And
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, can I ask a question of John real quick?
You sure may.
John, I appreciate this written document. I just want to make sure, since this is a public meeting, do we need to make sure there's copies of this available to the public here?
Yeah, it's not a privileged document as far
Right.
as I'm aware.
I'll
I
put
haven't
it in
seen
Dropbox.
I haven't seen it.
Okay, I just want to make sure that
I mean, I just wrote it down because I was like,
I think it's helpful.
I need a,
I just want to make sure the press and the people in attendance
Yes.
can also see it. So it's in the council Dropbox, it sounds like.
Okay.
That was it. Thank you.
I know the suggestion that came back from the task force was that it recommended that the city of Decorah hold a referendum on the municipalization at a time of its choosing. I know that during the task force work, they worked diligently on looking at all of the aspects, and I believe that looking back at their report, that they put what the advantages would be, what the advantages would not be. I know that some of the discussions we've had have dealt with the potential economic issues, not only of working with an MAU, but also the things that we're looking to put in place now. Fiber is one. So I guess I want to hear, I think before the council has talked about this and just sort of said, no, we're not going to do it, but they didn't actually vote. And so that's kind of what we're looking at as far as how to move forward, if it's the time to move forward. So I guess I want to open it up to council people.
I appreciate your insight, and I also appreciate Emily's work in drafting a path. I think we have an opportunity, you know, tonight to have a solid discussion and continue visioning and things like that. But I think if I was to pick one thing to talk about tonight to direct staff, it would be the infrastructure depreciation. Because just coming off of our work session where we looked at the city's budgeting, and we had Hacker Nelson come in and provide the city a really nice analytical overview of our assets and things like that. In my work on the street committee, we have really spent a lot of time looking at streetlights, because our streetlight ownership is 50% municipal and roughly 50% Alliant. And there are associated costs both ways, you know, maintenance and replacement and operations. And we know we spend roughly $130,000 on electricity for streetlights. But I've never been able to find out what the depreciation schedule is on those streetlights, because a lot of those streetlights that Alliant owns in our community and the associated infrastructure of the wires and things like that are older, and some have been replaced more recently. But if we had the depreciation schedule similarly to what we get from Hacker Nelson, when we analyze our assets, we know truly what we have and what we hold. We can know the depreciation schedule of our assets as far as the streetlights go, but we don't as far as Alliant. And I feel like that is not a depreciation schedule is not asking for privileged information. I mean, they might say it's privileged, but asking for that isn't providing their competition with something else. It's providing us with an ability to analyze our own future, especially whether we pursue with an MEU, or whether we were to enter into another agreement with them to discuss replacement of these lights. And I've never felt like we had a level playing field. So if nothing else tonight, if we could discuss directing staff, whether that has to be through the IUB or whether it's just a direct request of Alliant, of really putting a concerted effort into obtaining that depreciation schedule, I think it would benefit us as civic leaders to make a decision on our streetlight plan, which is outside of the scope of the MEU, I understand. I mean, and it's a good, it's still a good thing to know one way or another, right? So I would ask, if nothing else comes out of this meeting tonight, that we can direct staff to put in that request for information, because regardless of what avenue we go, it's going to allow us to make a better decision moving forward on our streetlights, which is, when we look at the impact of this rate case, that is, street lighting is really a massive portion of where our electric use is in our community. And I think it's an easy thing that people can see all the time, right? Like, people know that street lights are real. That nobody's going to question this. And people also understand that things depreciate. So asking for being able to put in Kelley Blue Book and know what your used car is worth, you can do that because you know how things depreciate. We don't have that luxury with Alliant, and that doesn't seem fair. So, yeah,
Haven't we tried to do that in the past, get that information from them?
we've asked, yeah.
Right.
Well, I'll go back to Travis in that sense, as far as being able to, once again, go back and try to get the information that he's been requesting.
So are you asking if that's an action that could be voted on,
Well-
considered by council?
Well,
Is that something that's feasible?
yeah,
to
well,
get done?
it sounds like something that would be extremely valuable to be able to at least see what type of cost we would be getting as far as some of the rate. Can you wait just a minute, please?
Yeah, I don't see why it couldn't be a simple action
I was
item.
gonna
as-
say, yeah.
That's not anything by statute that I'm aware of requires a
Okay.
resolution.
Okay. And you had a question?
No, that was just of Ross. I thought we'd had asked for that at previous times, but, and we weren't able to get it for whatever reason, right?
Just to clarify,
Right.
I mean, we could ask Alliant for a depreciation schedule, and they will give us whatever they want to. If we ask the IUB, they give the formula. That's all, that's the difference, right?
Yeah,
It's
okay.
the formula that we need, more than actually Alliant to tell us what they're gonna tell us what they're.
But it is something we could get a
Yeah.
hold of. That's
Right,
what-
no, I
Okay.
I specifically did want the depreciation schedule, because we can apply that against our assets as well. So that way you can really create an apples to apples comparison, where we don't have that luxury. We can't take our depreciation schedule and use it on theirs and have any idea of what the system replacement cost would be. So having good data,
Okay.
I feel like is important.
I understand that piece. Other councils?
Yeah, Mayor, I've got
Questions?
a few things that I'd like
Okay.
to share. You know,
We're gonna go with
you go ahead.
Steve,
Great.
and then we'll go with,
Oh, good. KO, if you want to go first, great. I think, you appointed me, like my second meeting as a council member, to serve as the council liaison to the MEU task force. And I watched these really great volunteer citizens come together a dozen times or more, bring in experts from all over the state, pursue the very information that Ross is talking about, legally from Alliant with a request, and then we escalated it to the IUB. And just as a point of information, I'm pretty sure the IUB's response was, that kind of information, we can't really rule on this unless you all, have a referendum, and then we can intervene here. For me, I reread the MEU task force recommendations to the council, and if you haven't yet had time to do that as a council member, I plea with you to to carefully consider the fruit of the hard work that the people we asked to serve their community in that way did. They worked very hard and thoughtfully to come up with these recommendations. And it was a unanimous recommendation. Now, the mayor is correct. The timing is something that they mentioned to us, we needed to be thoughtful about as a council, that we needed to act in the best interests of Decorah as to when to have a referendum. But they were not, they were unanimous in answering the question of whether to have a referendum. I was at every meeting. I listened to every expert they brought in. And I honestly was someone who started the process ignorant and undecided about the question of the desirability of an electric utility for our city. But my feelings got more complicated. I learned a lot. And I do think that I think we ought to, as a council, not just appreciate their work, but we ought to follow their recommendation. And I don't know if Emily's layout is the perfect way to go forward. I think we can discuss that more tonight. But I'd like to hear from those who haven't made themselves clear. I'd like to hear from you all. Are you interested in a vote on a referendum? And if so, or if not, I'd like to know why. For me, I think the timing is getting better than it was. So I'd like to see us proceed with a plan towards letting, and again, this isn't even us taking an opinion on whether an MEU is desirable for the city. This is us allowing the voters to have a say. And for me, that's a pretty clear yes. We have a unanimous recommendation from our fellow citizens who we asked to do the work. And I think the timing is good.
One thing that I want to reiterate as far as the discussion that they had when they went to make the vote was a very lengthy discussion. They eventually came to the unanimous, but that was after quite a bit of consideration. Anybody can go in and look at that. So it wasn't like they all said, no, we think that is. I mean, they took that into consideration, but I just wanted to make that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mayor. And I think the recording of that meeting would be useful if you're a council member who is considering the pros and the cons of this question. Mm-hmm. There was some nice discussion that evening.
Well, they're all on,
or that afternoon.
All of the meetings and everything.
Right. I would check out that last meeting. Mark Lovelace in particular really did a great job of laying out pros and cons. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm
no,
gonna go to.
just that same, follow-up on that same thing. I think there was many of them that were on that MEU task force that were on the fence, while in the end they did vote unanimously to go forward with it. There was, like I said, many of them that were on the fence, I think, at that time. But just to follow up on what Steve had said, I think, again, we had this discussion in a work session about a year ago after the MEU task force had finished up. And again, I want to commend the MEU task force for the 2 years of service they put into coming up with this document, because they didn't just look at, from a bias standpoint, if we want to make sure we make an MEU sound like it's the best thing to do. They looked at the pros and the cons and everything else, interviewed a number of places and people that had MEUs at there. They interviewed David Lynch, a lawyer that worked for, in conjunction with the IUB. So they did a very lengthy look at this entire thing. So again, I want to commend them for all the hard work they did do. And in the end, like the mayor said, they said, hold a referendum on municipalization at a time of its choosing for the city council recommendation. And at that time, I voiced my opinion when we had this work session that, I mean, given the circumstances we were dealing with at the time, the high interest rates, things like that, I think as a city, we have a lot on our docket currently going forward right now. We're attempting to get fiber to the premises, which is in the process of getting done. We've obviously just transferred land property in the hopes of getting a new school built. Last council meeting, we talked about the fire department and the city hall, we either have to make some decisions on whether to rebuild a new fire department, new city hall, or whether to repair this existing structure we have. We have a wastewater treatment plant operation going on to the tune of $4.9 million. We've seen some of our city revenues being cut lately. I know Waverly has discussed the idea of not opening their swimming pool this year. I mean, all cities and counties in Iowa are dealing with the same issues. And I'm just not hearing the support from most of the people that I've been talking to, constituents in Decorah, for this MEU to go forward. As far as timing goes, which seems to be what the recommendation was, I don't think this is the proper timing to go forward with it at this point in time.
Okay, why don't I go down?
So
I'm just gonna go down to each
hey,
council person.
that works, right? So I know this got presented, shortly after I started on council. I got the necessary materials, did the research. I even went as far as going up to the courthouse and getting the records for the last referendum that, occurred. I guess just my biggest concern is that, yes, there may be no associated cost with establishing, an MEU, but what's going to happen, down the road? What money are we going to have to put in? My biggest concern is, okay, Alliance major powerhouse. So what are they going to throw at us if we try to fund our own, MEU at the end of the day? I know my biggest concern, I will, echo on what Kirsten said too, is we have a lot of things in the fire right now in regards to bettering the community. And I feel like some of those need to take precedent. In addition, I just, I've had a lot of constituent emails, texts, phone calls, and, I do think that the support is there in some capacities, but overwhelmingly what I've received, the support isn't there. And at the end of the day, I got elected to represent my constituency. So, if they're not saying the support's there, that's where I'm headed as well.
Okay, Parker.
Okay, so when this first came on, I started getting a lot of, I got texts, I got phone calls from people, both positive, both negative. When we started talking about this again, being a new council member, I was around when it was going on. I knew about it. I knew the division behind it. I knew that there was a lot of issues with it. And so I had to also go back and kind of start reading some things. And I've made phone calls and tried to figure out where stuff is that's recorded and try to do my due diligence and seeing what was out there and what the decisions that were made. So I've came down to a couple points. A lot with what Kirsten and Mr. Miscelinich said. There's a difference. There is some cost things associated that in the future that I'm not necessarily too sure if we can handle, and there's a lot of just question mark there. With that said, I have read also what the MEU task force has proposed, and they said that it should go to referendum. They were put on by the council. They were appointed by the council, and they did a fantastic job on doing what they did to come up with their opinion. And their opinion was it needed to go to a referendum, but at a better time. What that better time is, I don't necessarily know. I don't have that answer. But with also getting the information that I have gotten from public, both positive and negative, both for and against, a lot like him, I represent my constituents, but my constituents also have a say in this. There is so much people with different opinions that I want their voices heard, and I think they should speak it. I do think that there should be a referendum, and if that referendum passes, that doesn't necessarily mean, in my opinion, that we all of a sudden have this multi-billion-dollar whatever infrastructure, that it's ours and we're now buying trucks and staffing it and maintaining it. It just means the public has given their opinion on the situation, and that opens up some doors for us to look at what possibilities are out there. And I know that's already been voted on prior, but I do believe, and I'll be the first one to, I was against it prior to. I was one of the against it. I was like, I don't think we should. And 6 months later, we had all these rate hikes, and I was a reasonable person, and I'm like, okay, I seen the game that was getting played. But with that being said, I back to Steve's point, I do think it should be for referendum. What that perfect time is it now? Is it, I lean more towards possibly a next year situation, why we got everything happening now, until we figure out where we sit with everything else. But that's my opinion and where I stand on it.
Okay. Randy?
Well, I'm pretty short and to the point. I think before we spend any more time or money on this, it needs to go to a public referendum and let the public speak. If they say no, we drop it for another 5 years and figure it out.
So,
Okay.
you're in favor of a referendum? Do you have a sense of the timing? I don't mean to.
Yeah, I was going to say, why don't you?
Well,
just-
When do you think?
That I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I know when is a good time to do anything. You pick a weekend to have an event, there's 10 other events going on. So we have no guarantees that the school bond is going to pass. We have no guarantees that a city hall remodel bond is going to pass. We just got to go.
I was really hoping Randy was going to have a time where he knew it was the best place to have a referendum, because I'm like, that. I don't know what that is,
I can only say, I only want to interject that it would take us some time. So to me, November seems really, we don't have enough time to have a referendum at that point. So the next time we could have one would be March, if I'm correct in that, which is.
I'll just add one other thing. I remember, and I certainly don't remember the direct quote, but David Lynch, their attorney for the MEU that had worked with them, made a statement similar to the fact that if you're not prepared to go all the way with this thing, don't even start going down that road. So I think that was a very vital piece of information.
He also did say in that same meeting, though, if you, it's worth getting the vote even if you're not going to go all the way. That was his comment, because you would have an MU and you could do something when you needed to. He was just suggesting after the vote, but he did say within that same meeting.
But referendums are free, they cost money too. You're starting down that road.
Are you looking to see what the time, when it is you can have
Yeah,
the referendum?
just confirming the special election options. March would be the, getting into next year, March would be the first one.
I have no interest in calling for referendum until after the school bond has had a chance to be on the ballot on its own. I feel like it would confuse the issue to have two major issues being decided by voters in the same election.
I appreciate that.
And I will say that it is correct that a referendum is not free, but it's fairly cheap when we're talking about millions and millions of dollars in rate increases coming for our citizens. The city of Decorah alone pays a little more than $500,000 a year for electricity, and so for me, it seems like even some of the numbers Emily is suggesting $50,000. If there's a possibility that puts us in a stronger position to be in control of our electric future and not subject to the whims of a profit-seeking corporation, $50,000 is a smart investment in our half a $1,000,000 electricity bill per year, just as a city. That's not even talking about our constituents.
And can you, Travis, do you have a rough idea of what an election would cost? I think I looked. I mean,
I do.
I did. No, just,
So-
let's let him answer first.
Carrie worked faster than Google here.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
actually, I just leaned over to John, not that I'd be advocating for, but typically if, for example, a general election.
Yeah, okay.
Typically, there's not additional costs when you put a question, a ballot initiative on a general election. Again, not advocating for it. Special election runs 4,000 to 6,000.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, best estimates we can give.
Now, with the, like, franchise fee stuff that went in for that sustainability, could you utilize that for that?
Mhm.
I will say, and this has nothing to do with an MEU, this is all about democracy. I am uncomfortable as a public official deciding whether or not we should let people speak based on having an election based on costs, right? This is the great thing about a referendum about anything, is that you may hear from constituents, and I don't know how many you heard from, right? I hear from people every day, and I actually keep a tally, right? But my guess is none of us have heard more than 10 people, and that would be a lot, right? On any one issue, we always, no matter the issue, hear the negative voices. That is what we always hear. And even when I teach and there's one negative comment, that's the only thing I hear. It's human nature to focus on the negative. The beauty of an election, which I think is what Randy is pointing out, is that is letting the people speak. We don't have to guess what our constituents think. We give them the voice.
Okay.
And I think that's just a very powerful tool of democracy.
Okay, and you want a time? Why not do it November of '25, put it on the city ballot? Can it go on the city ballot as a referendum, I should ask first?
I think we need to look into that, because the legislature changed the law as far as when referendums can be.
Yes.
And I think they said in odd numbered years, you can't have it in November. But in even numbered years, you could have it in November. Why? I don't know. but
Okay,
that's-
even a straight city-only,
Right.
okay, because that would be the best, in my opinion, the best representation when people are coming out to vote for the candidates that are going to be up.
And we can double check that.
Yeah, okay.
I guess I'm with Steve on that. You know, I'd hate to have a referendum come up at the time when we're having a referendum for the school as well, so. And I hate to start looking a year in advance to figure out when we want to have a referendum. I guess like to wait and see what it looks like at that point in time.
I
as
think
opposed
the school is thinking of next
The school's
November.
November, and
Right.
I would propose March, and the only reason I would propose it, because I'm not really proposing it, is it'll take about 9 months, right, to think about, like, it's great, I want to have a vote, but I also think we want to make sure that we have information for people, which is why I think what I was asking tonight isn't this discussion, right? I was saying, well, let's talk to My Energy, so that when people make their vote, they'd be like, how would we even do this? Let's talk to David Lynch, so we get ballot language, so that they understand what it is that they're gonna vote for. I mean, these are the things that last time around were the trip hazards. Most people thought that if they were gonna vote for an MEU, that meant either all of a sudden Alliant was gone and now we are running our own electric utility, or that it would cost us $1 million if they voted yes. None of those things are true. And so we need to do due diligence, like we would with any vote that we call, to provide the facts and the information so that people can make an informed vote. And to do that, I think it takes about 9 months. So yeah, if we do March 2025, we're looking at 12, we're ahead of the game. Obviously, we're announcing to Alliant that we might, we're considering this, so they started this game the moment they decided to build a center here, right? They started the game the moment that they started to bury the lines here. So they're ahead of us in terms of, which is why I think we have to communicate with the utility board that this is our intent. We have to let them know, because they had indicated that they would help us out if this is the way we are going. I don't think it hurts to call the referendum for March and then start talking to the utility board. I just think that we have to understand that there is a conversation that needs to be had in order to have a fair election with the utility board. Which is why my proposal was legal services, think about transition plans. I don't think we should touch the feasibility study, much like Randy said, because I don't think we should spend tons of money on this. I think we should do the bare minimum, much like we did with fiber, right? When we got the fiber vote, it was the bare minimum. Educate the public about what the vote means, figure out some some kind of like, is this even like feasible, how would we do it? Give them that information and let them vote. That's what I think we should be doing.
Ross, Ross, you mentioned interest in depreciation schedules from Alliant. Do you have more general thoughts on the referendum question?
I think it should happen. I also don't have a magic time, but I would agree that trying to compete with other civic interests in that same time frame is probably not in our community's best interest, nor until we, not to go back to my original point, but until we have a depreciation schedule and we really understand what assets are and what assets cost and what the IUB would look at, I don't think we can ever have a intelligent conversation. It's a data point, and that's why tonight I would just ask that my peers support the request for a data point, and have the IUB explain that situation either to us in a formula or say, no, it's going to take this. Because I think I think in a world of transparency, having a number that everyone agrees upon is so important. And I think having that data before we even set a referendum is, in my mind, valuable either way. So,
You want to make a motion? for that?
Wait, can we clarify with Andy? Because I think Andy brought that up, right? You said, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said that the IUB said they could provide that oversight, but only if we pursued the referendum. That there's a certain amount of, again, they can't talk to us until we are moving towards the utility. So I think we already have the answer from the utility board in terms of that
They wouldn't answer
question
until you.
until we call the referendum. So in order to get that information, we sort of have to be moving in that direction, and I do think, especially after hearing you tonight, right, setting a date, whether that's March or whatever, would allow us what you're looking for this summer. So, and I don't know, can you cancel a referendum when you call one if they came back and said,
Well, I was just gonna say, I think, I gotta correct myself. I think you can, in odd number year, have a special election in November, but not an even number. And it's a resolution that we're passing, or that you're passing. I suppose you could reconsider it within a certain amount of time, just as long, you've got to give the
You can
auditor.
do a new resolution to rescind the previous one.
Well, that's true too. We've got rules about how you how you can reconsider a resolution. But then there's a timing issue, because once it goes to the auditor, it has to go to the auditor within so much time before the election. I think once it's to the auditor, it's probably a done deal.
So you would have, if they make a resolution, they would have to state what the date is that they would have that referendum
Right.
on.
A-
It can't be just say, we're making a resolution to do a referendum, but we're not setting the date.
Right, and if I remember from 2018 in our work session, I was just looking at the PowerPoint, there's two possible questions that are on the referendum that you need to work with, hire special counsel and work with them. Two questions are, should you, and this isn't the exact verbiage, but should you establish an MEU, and should you also establish a board of trustees for that MEU?
so what if, could we tonight ask staff to consult with special counsel to draft language for a referendum and include questions about infrastructure and meeting with My Energy? Like, we direct this moving forward, but then when it came to the you would present that with us and then we could decide a date, or would you prefer a date that we had in mind?
We can leave the date blank, and
Yeah, I guess the question about the special counsel is which one, because you've used a couple of different firms before, so.
I mean, the task force recommended Lynch, but.
Mayor, Emily did make 3 pretty discrete and concrete proposals, and I wonder, because they all seem to be a ways of getting some of the information that we're talking about, I wonder if it'd be worth us going through them one by one and seeing if it reflects the will of the council.
Is this under number 2?
Yeah, like 1, 2, and 3. So like $50,000 earmarked for legal and planning expenses is a pretty clear, like, I'd like to discuss that question. To me, that seems like a way of making sure that we can get the information that we need to proceed thoughtfully. Before we talk about a referendum date, you know, I think we all have expressed a desire for good legal counsel and appropriate information, and that's not free.
You get the legal counsel first before you set a specific amount.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I like that this at least has a top number. You know, I'm worried about hiring someone with no sort of ceiling on the number, but maybe you're right that we should look at number 2 first, right? That do we as a council, it sounds like there's at least enough of us who are interested in letting the voters have their say. It sounds like we're all in favor, or a lot of us are in favor of that in 2025 maybe, March, November, who knows. So I think that it would be wise for us to hire a lawyer. That's Emily's second recommendation, and it seems to me like that would be a good and useful use of sustainability funds.
Do you have any suggestion or comment
I would
as far as
strongly
that?
encourage the consultation of special legal counsel if we're moving forward with this. You know, this is quite honestly a bit above my pay grade, and
Right, no, I understand that
don't
part.
want to trip up anything.
I
What
guess
about- just a
oh, go
minute.
ahead. Okay.
Well, what about making a specific amount?
I think that's fair. You know,
Okay.
you establish a threshold that, if nothing else, it would require staff to come back to the council and say, hey, that cap has been met, so here's where we're at for deliverables. Does council wish to continue that?
Stephen, maybe to your point and to the mayor's, what if we combined number 1 and number 2? And we took number 2, but we said a not to exceed $50,000 as an action for staff?
Sure, although I'm really hoping, I wasn't thinking that number 2 would cost $50,000.
Right, but a not to exceed.
Okay, yeah.
No, I'm just making that clear because he was like, it's nice to have a top end. It is good to have a top end. And this way it's an actionable thing with several bullet points of what we'd expect legal counsel to do.
Yeah, it seems to me like, oh, go ahead, Mayor.
So you're actually saying just put in number 2, not to exceed 50,000.
Right, so staff knows what their limit is.
I guess I'd like to just input the idea of what David Lynch had said. Unless you're willing to go all the way down this road, don't start. And it sounds like we're getting started down that road if we're going this way. So that's just all I'd like to say about it.
Again, I want to be clear about why I said 50,000. I think that the integrity of why we started the franchise fee, to me, rests on the fact that we said we could start a contingency fund essentially for MEU, pursuing an MEU. In that 50,000, I was thinking and it's not starting the road insofar, it's beginning the process, right? I mean, it's, yeah.
Started down
we
the
wanna
road.
all right, yeah, I guess you're right. We're gonna start down the road of pursuing an MEU but David Lynch wasn't saying that far. He was saying we should, no matter what, we should have an election. So I think he would be this is what the task force heard. But what I was thinking with the 50,000, it would include 2, but it would also actually include referendum money, because I knew it was 5,000 or somewhere around there. And again, it just establishes the fact that this was our commitment when we started.
I could imagine it. Go ahead.
I think one of the things is, first of all, this is the first time we've seen this, that you brought forth today, which I think is, so my question is, does it make sense to try and clarify this more before pretty much, it sounds like, first of all, they want the referendum. Secondly, they want a vote so that people can say one way or the other how they feel. There's a certain amount, but then what else are you looking for? How can you be more clear if you're going to make a vote on something.
I think
Do you
number,
understand what I
I
mean?
think number 2 is very clear.
Okay.
It's,
Okay.
it's 3 bullet-pointed action items.
You want to go ahead and read that?
I'd be happy to.
Ross
You're talking
can
Ross, okay?
The infrastructure depreciation formula that the IUB would use in deciding the value of the service area so that Decorah may accurately assess any claims made by Alliant regarding the value of their infrastructure. I think that would be helpful to know either way. A request to make municipalization a fair fight given the burden on taxpayers versus a corporate utility with infinite unregulated monies. Determine what the oversight of the IUB can have during a referendum as per the suggestion in the 2019 ruling. They would indicate that they would, at that point, be able to assist and develop ballot language that clearly defines the referendum. So the first and third items are clearly directing legal counsel to do something.
Except
The-
you would put in the second one too, with the amount, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I was proposing that. And Kristen, to your point, it's going down the road, but it's also going down the road of understanding our infrastructure one way or another. We need to understand this infrastructure, whether we sign a new franchise agreement or whether we do an MEU, because we're at the point now that we need to replace a good percentage of our streetlights. If you look around Decorah, some are nice and white, some are pink, some are dead, and we need to be able. And our contractor that has been doing it is just a single contractor as well locally. So, in order to make a good decision one way or another, I think $50,000 at most is, when we look at $130,000 a year in reoccurring cost, to better understand our situation isn't a huge reach, especially because it's using funds that Emily pointed out are coming from electric use. So
I agree, Ross. I think to Emily's sort of point, it's, that $50,000 number is going to get some attention paid to it.
Sure.
And I don't think any of us here are really considering that legal fees in the short term would add up to that big of a number. I think that number would include ensuring that our voters get correct information and good information that's well presented. That's not free, but we're a long way from spending that money.
Right.
And also for paying for the actual cost of having the referendum. So I would propose that we sort of authorize staff and direct them to retain Lynch legal counsel with a not to exceed number of $20,000. And I'm just putting that out there because I'd like to hear when we get to that threshold anyway. I don't want this to be sort of a sort
Carte
of
blanche?
mandate with no, exactly, thank you for the metaphor. And with specific instructions to pursue the city's interests as reflected in all 3 bullet points, with a 4th suggestion that they advise us on good timing for the referendum.
I would second.
So I'm going to,
Yeah, I was gonna say you gotta.
is it okay if I make a motion, Mayor, on that? Okay, then I'll make that my motion. Do you want me to repeat it, Carrie?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I move that we direct staff to retain Lynch legal counsel to pursue the 3 bullet points in the second number of Emily's document, with an additional request that they provide advice on the timing of the referendum and with monetary amount not to exceed $20,000.
And then seconded by Hadley.
Okay, motion made by Zittergruen, seconded by Hadley. Did you get that down, okay?
And Mayor, if I may, I did intend it in the spirit of this document that those monies would be from sustainability funds.
Good.
You want to make that a friendly amendment?
Friendly amendment, Mayor, is that okay?
Yeah.
All right.
And I agree.
Okay, do we have a motion? And everybody understands? Any other further discussion? Hearing none, roll call?
Zittergruen?
Aye.
Hadley?
Aye.
Chisel?
No.
Neal?
Aye.
Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Linich?
No.
Olson?
No.
Is that a 4-3?
Mhm.
Okay. Motion carried. So you have your marching orders, okay?
Can we consider this as well, Mayor?
Let's wait just a minute, okay? I want some more information as far as if you consider number 3. Would you look at that, please? To me, I think that should be separate.
Should we wait and hear from the lawyer, do you think?
I would,
Well, that really doesn't fall under the discussion here.
right.
I mean,
Because what you're doing is you're asking my energy to,
I think we need to have that conversation.
I think
well
you,
in
I
advance
think you
of
may
November.
need to have the conversation.
Yeah.
I don't think that we should be voting on that tonight. I think
And
we
I-
should,
Sorry,
right,
didn't mean to interject, but in talking, it doesn't need to be a motion,
okay,
because it doesn't obligate the city to anything. It's not expending funds. It's, I can pick up general consensus, and so staff can go ahead and start that conversation on what that might look
Okay.
like. It doesn't have to be an action item.
it sounds like that's what the council would like you to do. I would go ahead and work on that.
And it may be that our lawyer has advice on that front as well.
I'll leave that in the hands of the staff.
My goal, though, and what I liked about the point is that I do want the voters to have as clear and accurate of a picture of what they would be voting on as possible, which was not the case in the prior election.
Since it was suggested on Facebook that I would
Okay,
change the
okay.
lines.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the discussion. I appreciate that. All right, city manager, department heads, and council reports?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so I'll keep mine quick. Last Friday was the second legislative funnel, and so if it hadn't passed out of the House or Senate, whichever was not the originating chambers of a bill, it's dead unless it is related to Ways and Means, government oversight, or similar, might have a similar tag on it where you can add that it is a Ways and Means appropriation matter. So 2 items, or excuse me, I guess 3. I'll point out there are 2 civil service bills that are still alive. One that actually would allow cities to suspend the civil service hiring list practice for a year at a time, and another that would actually make it more difficult to discipline an individual covered under civil service. So those are the two differing bills. Stormwater and topsoil management, with that amendment, that would allow for cities to impose restrictions greater than greater than state or federal requirements, which are essentially nothing. Cities could impose those, but would be responsible financially for planning, design, and construction of those stormwater management practices. Did have conversations with both Representative Bergen and Senator Clemach while down in Des Moines. Representative Bergen did tell me he was going to vote no on the bill, realized the importance for Decorah, and did actually vote no on that measure. So now it's on the Senate side, and we'll see how that, if it advances or not. Do have advertisements out for the street superintendent position.
Can I have a question? This still has to do with the legislative part.
Sure.
they still have opportunity to be talking about revenue streams and such.
Yep, that would be Ways and Means.
Okay, and do you foresee, like, anything that happened last year?
Please
where-
God, no.
Pardon?
I said, please God, no.
That's right,
And
okay.
Ways and Means is funnel proof anyway,
Yep,
so it's not a time frame.
yeah.
No, it isn't. I just remember when they came back and said, okay.
Yeah, we're not hearing any rumblings of anything,
That's
so
what I
really
was-
hopeful that nothing comes up.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yep. So advertisements currently out for street superintendent. That first review of applications, positions open until filled. First review will be this Friday, the 22nd. Currently have no applications received on that one. And Public Works Director, that position is also currently being advertised, open until filled. First review the 29th. And my computer just died, so I gotta grab my notes on my phone. So Public Works Director, that first review is the 29th. I have received one application for that position. Decorah Downtown Betterment Association's annual meeting is Wednesday night at 5:30 at Hotel Wynn, if any was interested in attending that. And work session for the 25th. So there are 5 Mondays this month. The 4th Monday, proposed work session. We have a couple of code sections that, including the sign ordinance discussion. John and I have worked up some ordinance changes so basically the theme is city code changes. So it actually might be a good work session that if you do have other minor changes you as a council member want to talk about, send them our way. Talk to another council member if it's another specific one. I know ones have come out in the past, like, I'll just throw it out there, leash law. I know that's come up in the past.
What'd you say?
Leash law,
Dark sky.
dark sky.
Let's get rid of parking minimums. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Okay, dark sky.
So-
What was the other one?
Leash law.
Leash law.
So-
Dog leash law?
Uh,
Leash law?
well, we don't have one. Our city code reads that the dog must be,
We don't have.
Okay. I
dog must
got
be
you.
at heel.
I just want to make sure I got.
Control of the owner.
And control the owner, but also means your voice control. It does not mean on a physical leash.
Okay.
Yep.
As long as it says electronic.
So, anyway,
Electronic leash law.
so that was the theme for work session this month.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Carrie,
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
anything from over at the table other than what you've already reported on? Hearing none, let's go with Brent. Do you have anything?
I don't.
Okay, Christopher,
I don't have anything either.
Kirsten,
I'll break the monotony. Was at the chamber meeting on Friday. They have 2 big events coming up. Women's Weekend Out will be April 5th through the 7th. So if anybody's got some women they want to invite up and spend a weekend in Decorah, this would be the weekend to do it. They also have the Chamber Gala coming up on April 26th. It will be at Impact Coffee from 6 to 9. Tickets are available at the Chamber. I think it's $50 for members and $60 for non-members. The theme this year is Rock Around the Clock. So,
rock around the clock. Steve Zittergruen.
Thursday, the Winnebago Community Foundation is awarding grants, and I'll be there representing a few different organizations, but I'll represent the council as well. That's it. Go Hawks.
I have a question on the community foundation.
Yeah.
Is that, and they are presenting the program on the grants that they awarded this year?
The prior year, and I think they're announcing some as well. I
Announcing
think
yours?
so.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and just a thanks to the whole council for the respectful discussion this evening about an issue that obviously people feel strongly on. So thanks.
Okay. Randy,
Nothing this evening, Mayor.
Ross?
Well, I had a fun weekend.
Good.
St. Patrick's being what it is, my wife being an itinerant musician, I was able to visit several different communities and see their different levels of engagement with adult drinking. Something that I thought was interesting, that there was not mass violence or hysteria or anything. Mr. Parker, I don't know whether you were working. Glad I didn't see you professionally. But Wakan seems to handle alcohol at their own pace as well. As we look at changes in culture, and we've made some movement. I affectionately call Nordic Fest, former beer garden, the beer prison. The giant orange snow fence that kind of looked like a prison of some sort. So the movement at Nordic Fest to have a responsible alcohol venue by the museum and chamber area there, it was changed and it was hard in Decorah, but I think it went well. Other communities this weekend that I saw also handled alcohol safely and respectfully in a larger area. So maybe that's just something that we can consider down the road, is some way of doing banding and having a district where open carry in a festival environment is possible. I know we don't have committees anymore, but having a discussion with public safety and with staff about implementing that in the future, maybe that's a discussion we can have. It was fun. I had a good time. I made it home safely, and I was a DD, so that was a good thing. And then I also had a chance this weekend to get a new hat. I bought a hat supporting the community foundation. I have a size 8 head. I do have a big head, and it does somehow work out. So if you haven't had a chance to donate to the
Is it Carlson Park?
Carlson Park Community Foundation,
Carlson Park hat.
it's a Carlson Park hat. It's kind of a darker green with bright orange letters, so people will be able to see me coming. Yeah. So anyway, I recommend that if people are interested in hats, that's a good way to get a hat.
Emily?
Yeah, I want to just plug that the Sustainability Commission is hosting 2 public meetings. The first one on Wednesday, April 3rd from 5 to 7. And then again on Saturday, April 6th from 9 to 11. They're seeking community input into the update of the sustainability plan, which, as written, was to be updated every 5 years. I particularly am hoping that council members will make that Saturday session. My father's having surgery, and I will not be at the Saturday session. And I think it's really important for us to be there to support the work of sustainability, but also it's a great place to listen to constituents. So I guess that is Saturday, April 6th from 9 to 11 a.m. And they're at Pulpit Rock in the community room. So I do want to put that in front of council members. There's also one on Wednesday, April 3rd from 5 to 7. I will be attending that one, but again, I think the more of us that are there, 1, we see our constituents there, and 2, supporting the work of the sustainability plan.
Is that Wednesday one at Pulpit Rock too?
Yeah, they're both at Public Rock. And then I want to leave tonight, again, I think echoing Councilperson Zittergren's sentiments that it was a great discussion tonight, and I think even though we all have different perspectives on the MEU, I think it does help to hear everyone and to recognize that we're stronger together, like if we have these different viewpoints that eventually moving us forward. But I do want to leave with something that Mark Lovelace said during the deliberation of whether or not to move forward with referendum. For those of you that followed Mark and Karen and the rest of the task force, they really did deliberate over this for a long time. They met with a lot of industries that were very anti-MEU, right, with the idea of their relationship with Alliant being so strong. And I question now with their 20% rate increase, this might change some of their viewpoints. But what Mark said, which ultimately I think was what changed Mark's viewpoint on the issue in general, was that he can see, looking back in history from his viewpoint, that he wished that council 20 years ago, from back when he was there, had done something about this, because the advantages of an MEU are very apparent, right? There is no question about whether or not, if you had an MEU, if we had one right now, we'd be like, yes, right? There is no question that the 136 communities with their MEUs are very happy with them. And so what he didn't want to have happen, which is what I don't want to have happen, which is why I fight so hard on this issue, is that 20 years from now, I don't want my grandchildren, who hopefully will be living in Decorah, and this is essentially paraphrasing what Mark said, to look back at us and say, why didn't you do something when you could have? Because energy costs are such a burden to us. We don't have microgrids, whatever the thing is that we could do with an MEU. After listening to all of those communities, capture the benefits that they provide in their community. And then the other plea I will say on the issue is, when I think about this issue, people often ask me, why so passionate? Why is that, Emily? And we would never in a million years think of privatizing water. We would never think of the benefits of privatizing an essential resource to people. It's one of the reasons I'm gung-ho about fiber, because we live in a time where fiber is a basic human American right, because you can't function in a modern world without it. Energy is no less of a basic right. And our current structure, especially here in Decorah, under the thumb of Alliant, is a basic human right in which it's a social justice issue in our community. Our rates are exorbitant. And until we can figure that out for our constituents, we will all suffer. And that's money that people don't have to spend on groceries. That's money we don't have to spend on our pool. That's money we don't have to spend on our public safety. That's money we don't have to spend on all of the things that matter to us. And that's why this issue is so important to me. That's why I get so passionate. That's why I interrupt. And I just want to be very clear on what my motivations are. I'm risk averse. I have no desire to spend $1 million. I'm also very hopeful and believe that ultimately people will make rational decisions. And so I really do think that, like, in 2008, when the 3 communities went to the Iowa Utility Board, it didn't cost them $1 million. They were teeny tiny communities. And they came this close to getting a municipal electric utility for their communities. And because they didn't want to answer one question, because they didn't want to provide service outside of their community, they only wanted the city, they were turned down. Otherwise, they would have won. They would have been the first 3 communities in Iowa. They were half the size of Decorah, and they spent well under $100,000 to do it. So I have faith and hope, and I just want to put it out there that that is my passion, and that's why I believe in this so much.
Okay. 2 things. One, the library received a $10,000 grant to be able to update their doors and some of the restrooms downstairs to make them handicap accessible. And then on May 2nd, which is a Thursday night at the public library, sustainability and our housing, rural housing, are bringing in Craig Mosier, who's going to be talking about Iowa City's whole housing plan. So I want to get that date out so people will be able to come and visit. But we're partnering with the library as well. So that is Thursday, May 2nd at 6:30. And we'll be getting more information on that. Okay, motion to adjourn? Thank you.